Because my first anxiety attack happened, I was about 5 years old. How do you explain that to anybody, right? You know, you're 5 years old, you don't even know what the is going on. You have no idea what's happening.
How did you get out of that own state of depression?
So I made a promise to myself I wasn't gonna cry. I made a promise to myself.
Don't, no need, because I'll be the first.
I gotta be careful when I say this. What saved my life was my suicide attempt. Talking to doctors and everybody was so quick to, here's some medication. You know, and then what happens is the medication doesn't work, and then you need higher doses, and then you need more medication.
You rely on it.
You know, and now you went from, you know, having anxiety to having depression to having borderline personality disorder to having all, you just get fucking labeled and labeled and labeled and labeled. Something that people avoid, that people are scared of, that society paints as something bad, the importance of being vulnerable. That really is the secret to success, the secret to overcome anything in life.
Beautiful. So ladies and gentlemen, we are here with a very special guest, somebody who has been all over the map in terms of content creation, mental health, saving lives, and being there for people all over the world. Very excited to bring to you today none other than Anthony Caputo, my friend. Very nice. Pleasure to have you here with us today.
Pleasure.
It's been a long time. It's been a long time.
I don't know how I can trump that introduction, but thank you.
After reading your book, you talk a lot about your childhood memories and how those have kind of molded and shaped you into choosing the path that you chose today. What would you say was the biggest thing that inspired you from that to become a mental health advocate?
It's a tough question. I mean,
starting off strong.
If I look at inspiration, I mean, it falls under so many different categories, right? One inspiration for me was my wife. My wife was the first of it, who really helped guide me, and she was that strong one beside me. And a lot of people get mad when I say this, but you know, for me, you can never compare the strength of a woman to a man. We're not talking physical, but when you look at a woman's mindset, her perspective, their nurturing mentality
100%.
that they have, I owe almost all of this to my wife, to be honest.
That's beautiful.
Other inspirations would be the people that I'm helping. I know how hard it was for me when I first came out and suffering with anxiety and depression and having these intense fears of anxiety, and being a speaker and doing, you know, all the work I've done with people, for them to just get it so quick. You know, I'm kind of envious. You know, I'm kind of envious.
I know, I understand.
Right? You know,
yeah.
But it's so inspiring to a point where there was a point in my career where I became a little depressed. You know, after suffering and after overcoming all of this, but I was just depressed. I'm like, how are these people getting it so quick? I say one thing and they're shooting for the moon.
Yeah. How did you get out of that own state of depression?
So I made a promise to myself I wasn't gonna cry. I made a promise to myself.
Don't, no need, because I'll be the first.
I gotta be careful when I say this. What saved my life was my suicide attempt. Because I don't want people thinking, well, I just gotta go out and try to commit suicide and it's gonna save my life. A lot of suicide survivors say that the moment that they decide to do whatever it is that they do, they have instant regret. That could not be true. The second I pulled the trigger, my lights went out. I woke up in a state of confusion. I knew I was still alive because of the amount of pain I was in, but I was never more thankful to be alive. And I think that really put a dent in the pathway that anxiety and depression had on me for so long, if that makes sense.
100%, and a big change in the mindset. And one thing you mentioned in the book, which I'm gonna mess up quoting, but if you could do it for everyone watching, because I'm sure they'd love to hear it, the way you explained how you saw things after. Do you remember that specific quote? So that hit me hard.
Because my first anxiety attack happened, I was about 5 years old. And how do you explain that to anybody, right? You know, you're 5 years old, you don't even know what the fuck's going on. You have no idea what's happening in your life. I wasn't able to articulate it to myself. How am I gonna tell somebody I feel this? At a very young age, I started studying. And then fast forward, 20, 30 years later, talking to doctors and everybody was so quick to, here's some medication. You know, and then what happens is the medication doesn't work because it starts overriding, and then you
course.
need higher doses, and then you need more medication.
You
and,
rely on it.
you know, and now you went from, you know, having anxiety to having depression to having borderline personality disorder to having all, you just get fucking labeled and labeled and labeled and labeled. When I pulled that trigger, everything was in front of me. Like the entire, I don't want to say cure to anxiety, depression, but it was almost like a guiding light on how to actually overcome it. But I wasn't able to say it.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I wasn't able to say it. I mean, it was in front of me as clear as 1 + 1 = 2, but I just couldn't say it. And it took a couple years for me to really put the pieces of that puzzle together.
Gotcha.
Something that people avoid, that people are scared of,
Yeah.
that society paints as something bad, the importance of being vulnerable. That really is the secret to success, the secret to overcome anything in life.
Beautiful, man. No, I resonate so much with that because I can relate to myself as well. And in certain moments as you were speaking, they just kind of popped up where there was fear to be vulnerable. And like you said, society nowadays, it is painted. Nobody wants to be.
I was watching a interview with Mike Tyson, and he said it the best. He talked about fear, and he related it to fire. And he spoke about how it can keep you warm. It can cook your food, but if you allow it to engulf, it will kill you. That really resonated with me.
Yeah, that's a great, and that was Mike Tyson?
Mike Tyson, I was really impressed when I heard
Beautiful.
that. I was like, it doesn't sound so good. I mean, in his voice.
No, but when
I'm
you,
sorry, Mike.
paint the picture.
You know, I'm just right. I'm sorry, but when you look at that as a whole,
Yeah.
it does make a lot of sense because fear fucks us up, man.
Sure.
You know, fear really fucks us up.
What was the main thing you could remember as like a turning point in your life, but fear was kind of holding you back? How'd you get your way out of that, if that is something that took place, if you could think of anything?
It was after the attempt.
Yeah.
I had no choice but to surrender. At that point, right, you know, I went from my lowest point in my life, developing agoraphobia. I ran out of excuses. I exhausted all the bullshit I could have done, because that's what anxiety does, right? It just brings out the worst in you,
Yeah.
and it creates something that you cannot handle yourself, that you cannot stand yourself. This is where, you know, I got a lot of controversy online with this, because in my observation, I feel that the stigma that is associated with anxiety and depression comes from the people that are actually suffering. There's millions of people out there that suffer, but it is so hard to get help. And, you know, on the other hand, somebody like myself who has suffered for so long, I can relate and I understand how hard it is to get help, because it's tough to understand, and everybody's different. And that's the crazy thing about it, right? Everybody's different.
One thing will cure everybody, like you were mentioning earlier. Is there anything that you could say briefly to anyone right now who would be watching? One line, one message. What would you say to them?
Life is amazing once you're able to see it. I explain anxiety and depression like going outside on a beautiful sunny day, but not feeling the warmth of the sun on your face. And it's tough, it's hard, because you're never in a position in life where you're able to stay present and stay aware. You know, and a lot of people don't talk about this. I started coming out more when I started seeing a lot of cancer patients on my feeds, right? Because I had an organization that we would help a lot of kids with cancer. A lot of the parents were posting what really goes on, because when you're looking at these commercials and you're watching these videos, you see this child with, you know, no hair and they're holding a teddy bear. That's not the reality of what families go through with a child that has cancer. You know, it's pretty graphic. And I felt that was very impactful. And I thought, what if we can do the same thing with mental health? What if we can, you know, I don't want to say throw it in people's faces, but what if we can take different concepts and different messages and really concentrate on what people are not talking about? The reality behind, the relationships it destroys, the marriages it destroys, all these people that might look at a person and say, he's a bad father, he's a bad parent, he's a bad husband, she's a bad wife, she's lazy, she's this. If we can take that and really show people what it's like living with anxiety and depression, I think we'd be able to save a lot more lives.
100%, and a lot of people would look at it in a different way. They would be
course.
able to understand it more from that person's point of
From
view.
from a different perspective. And life is about perspective and choice, right? Life's about perspective and choice, and you know, how we decide to live, what we choose to view somebody as,
Yes.
without understanding their story.
I do want to just segue real quick into what you're up to now, because I've been seeing you're doing a lot of stuff now. I remember seeing your post on Facebook. Then TikTok came out, and you tell me all about that, because you guys have skyrocketed.
In the film industry, I met some amazing people, and one of the people I met, Gabriel, is a good friend of mine. He loved the content, and I know mental health really touched him. I know he has this soft spot from his own experiences. So he always loved our content, and he was always, we should do more, and we should really put it out there.
Yeah.
And this kid's a genius, man. Fuck, you got to see this guy.
Yeah.
He's a DOP. He is just phenomenal.
That's
I
awesome.
have so much respect for this kid. So anyways, long story short, he contacted me. He's like, Anth, listen, I really want to do something different. I really want to fucking just blow this out of the water. Let's do this. We can do A, B, and C. And he got me excited. He put that fire back under my ass,
you
right?
up a little bit. That's fantastic.
So he's like, listen, let's do a podcast, because on TikTok and on Facebook and Instagram we're verified.
Yeah.
So I got to be cautious of what I say, and you got to be careful of what you're saying. He's like, I love your content, and everything you say is fucking incredible.
Yeah.
He goes, but when we're on set and you're just being unhinged, he goes, that fucking gets me. He's like, why don't we start something where you can just be unhinged and bring guests on and talk about this stuff, and it'd be like two guys sitting at a bar talking. I'm like, fuck, Gabe, you know what? You're a genius, man. Let's do it.
That's fantastic.
So that's
where you're heading towards now, if I'm correct.
I'm excited about it.
Can you share any of it with us?
It's gonna be something that I think is needed. It's going to be something that I think everybody can relate to.
Awesome.
Now look at the shit that's happening in this world.
Yeah.
A lot of this is fueled by mental health. A lot of these people that are suffering. When you have anxiety, when you have depression, you create these false realities. And it's based on survival. Me as a father, I think I'm an amazing father. I fucking love my children to death. But if I'm in a room and there's an exit in front of me and all my children are in front of me and I'm having anxiety and I need to get out that door, I'm stepping on everybody's heads. Mm-hmm. Now, what would I look like as a father?
Yeah.
The mind is a very powerful thing. We are going to be speaking a lot of the behind the scenes with mental health.
Beautiful.
Not this fucking bullshit that all this companies portray it as, or what people think. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We're really going to blow that out of the water.
Well, that's fantastic.
I'm excited.
It sounds like it's going to be amazing and be able to show a completely new side of what it is you've been tackling for, 30 years.
Oh my God,
and you're going to be able to share it in a new, bright way. And I think everybody here is going to be super excited to see that when it comes out. If you were to have someone here with us right now in front of us, whether that's a teenager that's going through anxiety in school, being bullied, someone who's having a midlife crisis, or someone who is going through anxiety and nobody in their family understands it, or they feel alone. One message that you could say to someone right now to let them know that there is hope.
People living with anxiety are a different person altogether. They put up this persona that they want to be alone. They don't. I don't give a fuck what anybody says. They don't. I think these are false realities that we've created. Somebody said, I heard him say, where living with anxiety and depression it's the anticipation of the exhaustion, because you are constantly living in the future. You build this fear. You don't understand it a lot of the times, and a lot of times people with anxiety, they don't get it. They don't know what's going on. They're just trying to survive, and a lot of times having somebody that can just understand it and have the patience for them could change a person's life. And I can't even explain or describe how drastically having the patience and just trying to understand somebody. But if you're able just to see through that wall of anxiety, I'm telling you, you'll find beauty like you've never seen it before. You know, I was reading about a man actually committed suicide, and he wrote a letter, and he said, I am going to walk to the Golden Gate Bridge. If one person smiles at me, I won't jump. He ended up jumping. It's sad, you know, because you see people out there that appear to be assholes or appear to be a certain way, or they're overreacting, or they're doing things that just don't make sense, and they're being a certain type of way. And a lot of times people don't even see that it's just the anxiety. Give them that chance, you know, have a little bit of patience and understanding. It can change somebody's life.